Welcome to this presentation, which is part of the U.S. Department of Commerce's Commercial Law Development Program's Procurement Basics series. My name is Greg Giddens. I'm a retired U.S. federal employee with over 30 years experience in acquisition, and now I work to help others be successful in the world of procurement. This program is on requirements development. Of all the decisions that must be made as you start a procurement, the decision about your requirement is the foundation. Getting your requirement right will lessen risk to your program and help you get your mission accomplished at a good value.
Here's a look at the agenda we'll use during our session. We'll start by taking a look at the overall acquisition process, and then we'll focus in on requirements development, looking at a few tips, the importance of requirements development, market research, and some types of requirements documents that we can use to articulate and describe our requirement. The overall acquisition process starts with pre-award, where we establish the team, define our requirements, and work through our strategies. And then solicitation and award, where we develop the solicitation, issue it, receive the tenders and evaluate them and award the contract, and then ends with post-award performance management. Defining requirements happens in the pre-award process, and it is the foundational activity that sets the stage for success throughout the acquisition process. Here's a few tips to get us started as we think about requirements development. Discussions with industry are key. We want to make sure that we have a robust dialogue and discussions with industry as we develop our requirements. And as we think about developing our requirements, we can't just go gather them. We have to dig for them. This is hard work to really uncover what our requirements are and do so in a way that industry can understand them. We need to make sure that we're working with users so that we can think like a user as we're laying out our requirement. We want to make sure that the people that will actually be using the solution are involved in giving us input as we determine and set and document the requirements. Use cases live longer than details. We need to be able to lay out some use cases to help our requirements come to life as we move through the process. We need to make sure we're using plain language, not techno speak. The documents defining our requirements need to be written so that they are understandable in a plain language environment. And we need to be ready to iterate with business owners, with users and industry. We need to understand this is a process that will require an agile and iterative approach, and we need to take the time to get it right. Let's take a moment to really think about why requirements development is important. In the 2018 Pulse of the Profession, the Project Management Institute, which is an international leader in project management, asked of all the projects in your organization over the past 12 months that were deemed as failures, what were the primary cause of the failures? What do you think the percentage was that was identified to, that was linked to poor requirements development? What do you think? The Pulse of the Profession survey identified 35% of the projects that were deemed as failures were failures because of poor requirements development. A third of the programs attributed failure to poor requirements development. Requirements development is something we have to get right for our programs and our projects. Defining our requirement well will get us a better solution. It is the foundational activity that we go through during the acquisition process to make sure we have a common understanding between the government and industry on the problem we're trying to solve. As we think about that problem that we're trying to solve, we also need to think about what success looks like. And we need to do that with early engagement, early discussion, early talks with industry, which is market research. This will help us understand what's available in the market, how close that solution comes to meeting our needs, and it'll also help us understand what the typical terms and conditions of the market are What are the risk factors? What are the issues that drive the market? When we think about the solutions that are out there and available, maybe there's an 80% solution. Maybe there's a 90% solution. If we rethink our policy or our requirement, maybe we can close that gap and get closer to a 100% solution. Many times organizations don't have the internal expertise to do this type of requirements analysis and research on their own. And there are certainly companies that specialize in working with government agencies to define their requirement, and they do so in a way that is free of conflict because these companies will not bid and not solicit responses to solicitations that result from them engaging with the government to define requirements. We also need to be able to use international standards such as ISO instead of defining our own standards. The more that we can use terms that are generally accepted in the industry and in the market, and international standards are a great way to do this, the better that we can define our requirements in a way that industry can understand them. We also need to be able to host a pre-solicitation conference. This is a great way to bring industry in and talk about our requirement in a way that we can get feedback from industry so that we can improve our requirement, again, to increase the probability that we'll have a common understanding. We can also release draft documents for comment, consider the input, and then make appropriate changes to our requirement. Here's a little cartoon about how requirements can become so important and make sure that we have a common understanding. From the beginning on how a customer explained their requirement, through how a project leader might have understood it, to how it was being designed, to how it was being described, to how it was being supported, to how it was being built, and in the end, really what the customer wanted. There are several stakeholders that will look at the requirement, and we need to make sure we describe it in a way that everyone sees the same end state. It's really important for us to understand the problem we're trying to solve, to really know what success looks like. If I can use an automobile or a car example, if we need transportation, if we need a car, we can think about our problem as needing a set of pieces and parts that we can put together to create a car. But if really our requirement is transportation, if our requirement is really a car, then perhaps what we need to do is understand and document our requirement in those terms. So what is our requirement? Is our requirement for pieces and parts for a car, or is a requirement of car? How we articulate, how we define our requirement will drive industry as they create their solutions. There are three main types of requirements documents: the statement of work, the performance work statement, and the statement of objectives. The statement of work is used when the work is well known and can be described in very specific terms. When the government knows exactly what processes, tools, technologies, methods the contractor must use in order to satisfy the requirements of the contract. It describes what work is to be done and how the work is to be done. The performance work statement focuses on required outcomes or results. It does not describe the work to be done, but describes the outcomes, the results that need to be accomplished. And it does that still in very clear and specific terms. It describes the performance standards as well as the methodology to be used to measure and evaluate the performance against those standards. Again, while the statement of work focuses on the work to be done and how it is to be done, the performance work statement focuses on the outcomes or results of the effort. The statement of objectives provides basic top-level objectives as well as the expected outcomes and results, but instead of describing the performance standards, it requires competing contractors to respond with their own performance work statement, which includes their performance metrics, their measurement plan, and their quality assurance plan. This allows the maximum opportunity to leverage innovation and solutioning from industry. Let's use a simple example to make sure that we can understand the difference between the three types of requirements document. Let's look at a lawn maintenance example. A statement of work might contain language that says the contractor must mow the lawn twice per week. And this statement would be true regardless of how fast the grass is growing, how well it looks, how much it's rained, how dry it is. Whatever else happens, the contractor must mow the lawn twice per week. A performance work statement, however, would focus on really the outcome or the result. It might read something like, the grass must be cut so that it maintains a height between 2 and 3 inches. Again, not focusing on how often it needs to be cut, but on the result of having a lawn that is between 2 to 3 inches. The statement of objectives then even focuses less about the 2 or 3 inches in terms of the expected results or outcome, but would ask the contractor to provide a performance work statement that would contain that type of outcome. The statement objectives might be something like, the grass must be maintained at a reasonable height to be specified in the performance work statement. This gives industry the ability to think about how they can best accomplish the work and then provide the appropriate measurement, results, and methodology to the government for their consideration.
Thank you for engaging in this webinar session focused on requirements development. I hope you have enjoyed sharing this program with me and that you've learned a few things as well. Requirements development is hard. You have to think through what your end state looks like before you can document it as part of your requirement. I urge you to take the time up front to get it right. I and the U.S. Department of Commerce's Commercial Law Development Program wish you every success.